You really think I can't make him fall for me? Watch me. That was the bet. That was the reckless, stupid spark that set everything on fire. It started in the corner booth of a dive bar just off campus, the kind of place where frat boys shouted over jukebox noise and cheap beer drowned out reason. My friends laughed, slapping my back, daring me to do the unthinkable seduce Professor Aaron Whitmore, the most intimidating man stalking the lecture halls of Boston University. He was infamous for his no-nonsense rules, his razor-sharp critiques, his cold glare that could reduce even the boldest students to silence. He was untouchable, or so they thought. I smirked, masking the tiny sting of insecurity inside me. Give me 3 weeks, I said. He won't know what hit him. But here's the thing no one told Mizamatimes. When you play with fire, you end up burning far deeper than you ever imagined. Professor Whitmore wasn't the kind of man you noticed once and forgot. Even the way he walked across campus carried authority, like the world bent around his presence. He had that clean-cut, all-American professor look, neatly styled sandy brown hair, sharp jawline, glasses perched perfectly on his nose. His voice was low, commanding, laced with intellect that made students sit straighter whether they wanted to or not. And me? I was the exact opposite. Jordan Hayes, 21, political science major, chronic rule breaker. My hair perpetually messy, my jeans torn in ways that weren't fashionable but lived in, my attitude somewhere between cocky and careless. I wasn't the guy who made honor roll. I was the guy who made jokes too loud in lecture and smirked when I got scolded for being late. But maybe that's why the challenge was irresistible. He was control, I was chaos. He was discipline, I was temptation. It was a story waiting to be written. The first time I tried, it was laughably pathetic. I lingered after class, leaning on his desk with a grin I thought was charming. Great lecture today, Professor. I never realized the separation of powers could sound so sexy. He didn't even blink. Hayes, if you plan to flatter your way into a better grade, don't bother. Effort, not flattery, earns results. Then he dismissed me with a flick of his hand, eyes already back on his papers. I walked out, cheeks flushed but heart pounding. Cold rejection, yes, but not defeat. If anything, it fueled me. What I didn't expect was how quickly lines blurred. The more I pushed, the more I noticed cracks in his perfect armor. Late nights in his office, stacks of books towering like walls around him, the faint weariness in his eyes when he thought no one was watching. He wasn't just Professor Whitmore, the untouchable. He was a Rona man who stayed too late, carried too much, lived too alone. And somewhere between the teasing smiles, the deliberate brushes of my hand against his arm when passing papers, the way I leaned just a little too close during office hours, I started seeing him differently. It wasn't just a bet anymore. It was an ache. One night, I found myself outside his office, long after campus had gone quiet. The hallway smelled faintly of dust and old paper. Light spilled under his door. I knocked, heart hammering. "Come in," his voice called. He looked up when I entered, surprised but not annoyed. "Hayes, do you realize what time it is?" I shrugged, leaning casually against the doorframe. "Couldn't sleep. Thought maybe you couldn't either." His lips pressed into a thin line, but he didn't kick me out. Instead, he gestured to a chair. "Sit. If you're here, you might as well make yourself useful. I could use a second set of eyes on these drafts." I did. For hours, I sat across from him, our heads bent over the same papers, our shoulders occasionally brushing. Electricity hummed in the space between us, sharp and undeniable. When our fingers accidentally touched reaching for the same sheet, he froze. For the briefest second, his eyes met minion-shielded, conflicted, and something else. Something that made me forget this was ever a game. But guilt lingered, heavy and sour. Every laugh, every stolen glance carried the weight of my secret. This all started as a bet, and I couldn't tell him, not yet, because by then, I wasn't trying to win anymore. I was already lozenging the best and worst way. The shift came subtly. He started waiting a beat longer when I spoke, listening more intently than a professor ever should. His scoldings softened, his sarcasm grew warmer. And one evening, when I walked him to his car, rain soaking the pavement, he hesitated before unlocking the door. "You're dangerous, Hayes," he said quietly, almost to himself. "Why?" I whispered back, my breath visible in the cold night. His eyes lingered on mine, full of emotions I couldn't yet name. "Because I'm not supposed to want this." My heart nearly broke through my chest. I wanted to say everything in that moment that I wanted him to, that I didn't care about rules, that this was more than a bet. But the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I just smiled faintly, trying to mask the storm inside. "Maybe rules were meant to be broken," I said. His silence was answer enough. The truth? I had started this as a challenge, but somewhere along the line it became a confession. Every reckless move was less about winning a dare and more about desperately hoping he'd see Menet as a student, not as a joke, but as someone who could matter to him. But I also knew the deeper I went, the harder the fall. Because sooner or later, the truth about the bet would come out. And when it did, it would shatter everything. And God, I wasn't sure if I could survive losing him. That night, lying awake in my cramped apartment, I replayed every moment, the way his hand lingered just an inch too long when brushing past me, the way his voice softened when he said my name, the way his eyes almost begged me not to give up. It wasn't just seduction anymore. It was love. But how do you tell a man you never meant to fall for, that your first step toward him was built on a lie? The confession came like a grenade, tearing through the fragile peace we had built. It was a Friday night, the air heavy with late summer heat. We were in his office again, the golden desk lamp casting a halo around him. I had planned to keep quiet forever, to bury the truth so deep it would never see the light. But lies rot inside you, and mine had begun to choke me. "I need to tell you something," I said, my voice shaking. Aaron looked up from his papers, adjusting his glasses. "Go on." The words clawed out of me. "The Suicide didn't start the way you think. Started as a bet. A stupid, childish dare. I said I could make you fall for me." The silence that followed was unbearable. His pen slipped from his fingers, clattering onto the desk. "A bet," he repeated, his tone flat, his expression unreadable. "Yes," I whispered, guilt burning in my chest. "But it isn't a bet anymore. It hasn't been for a long time." My throat closed, the weight of my feelings pressing hard. "I love you, Aaron." He stood so suddenly his chair scraped against the floor. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" His voice was sharp, but beneath it trembled something raw. "You humiliated me. You turned me into a joke." "No," I said quickly, stepping closer. "That's not what this is. Started wrong, but everything after it's real. I swear to you." But his eyes were steel, his jaw tight. He moved past me, opening the door. "Leave, Jordan." My chest caved in, but I did as he asked. Walking out felt like exile, every step heavier than the last. The days after were torture. Classrooms turned into minefields. He never looked at me, not once, his voice colder than winter whenever he called my name. Friends laughed when they asked about the bet, unaware of the blood still dripping from my heart. I had won their dare, yes, but I had lost something far greater. For weeks, I lived in the hollow of my own mistakes. I stopped going out, stopped joking, stopped pretending I was fine. Because the truth was, without him, I wasn't. And then came the letter. It wasn't meant for me. It was a draft he'd left behind in the department printer, pages forgotten among the clutter. My hands trembled as I picked it up, eyes scanning words that weren't meant to be read. There are rules meant to protect us, but some rules feel like chains. I've built a life around discipline, around control, but there is a boy who has unraveled me completely. I cannot forgive his betrayal, yet I cannot deny that when he looks at me, I feel alive for the first time in years. How cruel that love and anger live in the same breath. I pressed the pages to my chest, tears stinging my eyes. He still felt something. He hadn't buried me entirely. That was enough to push me into action. It happened on the night of the department gala, a formal event filled with wine glasses and polite laughter. He stood across the room in a perfectly cut navy suit, every line of him sharp and unapproachable. My heart raced, but I moved toward him anyway. When I reached him, he stiffened, his eyes narrowing. "This isn't the place." "Maybe not," I said, voice trembling but firm. "But I can't keep quiet anymore." I took a breath, letting every mask fall away. I was a fool. I let pride and recklessness blind me. But you have to know this: every moment we shared, every late night, every smile, I wasn't acting. I wasn't pretending. I fell for you so hard I can't see the ground anymore. The room seemed to fade, all eyes and voices blurring into nothing. It was just him and me. For a long time, he didn't answer. Then, finally, he whispered, "Do you know what it felt like, Jordan? To think I was nothing more than your game." I swallowed hard, my chest aching. It felt wrong. "I know. And I'll spend as long as it takes proving that you mean everything to me. Not as a professor, not as a challenge, but as the man who makes me want to be better than I've ever been." His gaze searched mine, anger and longing battling across his face. And then, like the breaking of a storm, his hand reached for mine. We slipped out of the gala into the cool night air. Neither of us spoke until we reached the empty courtyard. Under the glow of the street lamp, he finally let go of the breath he'd been holding. "You drive me insane," he murmured. "You make me furious. You make me feel like I'm standing on the edge of something I can't control." I stepped closer, my heart thundering. And I hate myself for wanting you anyway." His voice cracked on the last word. I cupped his face, daring to touch him after so long. "Then don't hate yourself. Just want me. That's all I need." For one suspended heartbeat, we hovered there, caught between ruin and redemption. Then he pulled me in, his lips crashing against mine with years of restraint shattering all at once. It was desperate, messy, perfect. The kiss wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was a beginning. From that night, everything changed. Slowly, carefully, we rebuilt what had been broken. Trust came in peace, late-night conversations, apologies whispered into the dark, the courage to be honest even when it hurt. We were still student and professor, still bound by rules and risk. But beyond that, we were just two men who had found something worth defying the world for. Months later, sitting together in his apartment with books scattered around us and his arm warm against mine, he said softly, "You know, I used to think destiny was nonsense. But then you walked into my life, reckless and loud, and somehow, it all made sense." I smiled, resting my head on his shoulder. "Guess your destiny lost a bet." He chuckled, kissing my hair. "No, my destiny won." And for the first time, I believed him. Because sometimes love doesn't begin the right way. Sometimes it starts with mistakes, with fire, with broken rules. But if you're lucky, it grows into something stronger, something worth every scar. Something that feels like forever. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with the latest videos.